All right. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Tuesday Together Talk. I am Reverend Rebecca Burrow. I'm the founder and CEO of Building Reconciliation, Inclusion, Diversity, and Gender Equity. Welcome to Black History Month. Tonight, we are talking about privilege, colorism, and natural hair. My guests tonight is we have Jerry Lee. I'm going to bring her into the studio. Welcome, Jerry Lee. Thank you for being here on this evening.
Thank you for having me.
And we have Sharon Lynn. Now, thank you, Sharon, for being here on this evening.
Thank you for having me.
Now, I want, Jerry, I'll start with you. I want you to just tell the people a little bit something about yourself before we dive into this deep conversation on this evening.
Okay, wait, you didn't tell me I had to prepare to talk about myself for a little bit. Um,
Sure.
let's see. I'm born and raised in Jamaica. Spent the first 15 years there. Moved from Jamaica. I've been living here 30 years, 20 years in Florida. I have a beautiful wife, beautiful 8-year-old boy girl twins who drive me crazy, but that's what they're supposed to do. They're doing their job. And I am behavioral support at an elementary school.
Thank you, Jerry.
That's my
Thanks
life
for
in a nutshell.
well, thank you for being one of our guest conversationalists for this evening. Sharon Lynn, tell us a little bit of something about yourself.
My name is Sharon Anderson. I am your family through my father, Dr. Rufus Burrow. I'm an only child, which definitely informs a lot of my thought patterns and behavior. I live outside of Philadelphia right now. And I'm going to mention this because this may be pertinent to our conversation later, but I've lived in a lot of places across this country, East Coast, Midwest, and the South, and now back here to the East Coast. So that kind of gives me some different perspectives on what we're going to talk about tonight. I have one daughter who is 14, and two fur babies, my two dogs. And my profession is as an attorney. I do a lot of compliance work.
All right. Thank you, Sharon, for being here on this evening. Tonight, we're going to start with our conversation on privilege and colorism. On the 21st of February, we'll talk about privilege and natural hair. And on the 28th of February, we'll close it out with a conversation on privilege, colorism, and natural hair. So next week, our guests will be Dorothea Manley and Marissa Price. The following week, we'll have Michelle McFarlane, Carrie Hepburn Brown, and we might even be adding another person to the conversation, which will be my sister, Rhonda Houston. So tonight, I want to just take a few minutes before we dive into this conversation and let you know why I decided to have this conversation. One, I want for the Black community to start having an in-depth discussion on how we can solve the problem of divisiveness within our community, which really has trickled down from slavery, from the slave era until now. We're still struggling with colorism as a result of what happened during slavery. And then it went on to, it was perpetuated through the systemic racism. I also want for our future generations to have a sense of self-worth and pride in who they are from the womb till the time they leave this earth. I want them to never doubt who they are and the value of who they are solely based upon their skin tone. I want for our future generations to never experience an ounce of disrespect from members of their own cultures due to their skin tone and the texture of their hair. So I want this conversation tonight. I want us to dig deep into colorism and the impact it's had within the community, But I also want us to start talking about solutions on how we can come together. Now, listen, I know that we've had plenty of conversations about colorism on social media here of late, primarily due to all of the issues and different conversations that we've been having related to reality TV. If you watched Basketball Wives, they had some colorism issues. If you watch Real Housewives of Potomac, you see some colorism issues in those sort of reality TV settings. But if you don't watch reality TV, then perhaps you still experience colorism in your own life and you have firsthand experience in dealing with colorism. If you're my age, you probably remember Spike Lee's School Days. That particular movie really gave us a conversation piece related to colorism. You all remember the good and bad hair, dark skin, light skin, all of those things that continue to divide our community were represented in that movie School Days. If you haven't seen Spike Lee's School Days, it's Black History Month. Go ahead and watch the movie, and maybe you'll get a better context or understanding of what this conversation is tonight. So let me first define colorism for you. Colorism is a form of discrimination based on skin tone, wherein people with lighter complexions are advantaged over those with darker ones. However, unfortunately, within our community, it has pitted us against one, light skin against dark skin against light skin, and all because of someone in a plantation, slave owners, that decided they would have rape Black women that were enslaved, and then as a result produced light or fairer complexion children. Those children were often allowed to work in the slave house, the slave owner's house. Now, that's where we get some of the derogatory terms where you hear people use house and the N word, and where we also hear things like Uncle Tom and those sorts of things, people that talk about colorism within that context. However, colorism has continued to plague our society because colorism taught us how to esteem lighter skinned people over darker skinned people within our own community. And that was done because lighter skin was more acceptable to white people. And for that reason, we have been at odds with one another for far too long based on someone else's benefit of us being at odds. So tonight we want to dig into this conversation. Thank you all so much for being here. I need for you all in the listening audience. Y'all know, if you're a regular member of Tuesday Together Talk, you know that we talk back to one another. This is a conversation. This is not a monologue. This will be a conversation. So I need it for you to listen if you're on YouTube, if you're on Facebook, or if you're even watching now from the Building Reconciliation, Inclusion, Diversity, and Gender Equity website. I need for you all to talk back to us this evening. I want to also real quick say good evening. Darlene, it's good to see you in the room. Darlene, I know you got something good for us tonight. You're going to share in those comments. Thank you so much for being here. Carrie, Yvonne, thank you so much for being here. Can't wait to hear your part on this discussion come the 28th of February. So thank you, my special guest conversationalists. I think I'm going to start calling y'all my resident experts. Thank you so much. Now, y'all ready to get into this conversation?
Sure.
Yes.
All right. Y'all said, Shiraz said, sure, why not? So let me start with this. And I'm gonna see if this resonates with anybody in the listening audience. If I trigger some kind of emotional response, I'll apologize ahead of this, but I think this is an important piece of this conversation. Darky, red bone, light bright, almost white, dark skinned, light skinned, purple black, high yellow, jet black, blue black. Just a few of the names I've heard people within the Black community call one another. Do any of these names sound familiar to you? Sharon, I'm going to start with you since you, at least on my screen, you're on the you're on my bottom level. So we're going to go from the bottom up this evening. I want to start with you. Any of those names, have you heard any of those names, or have you been called any of those names?
Yeah, definitely all of those names are familiar. Um, the majority of them I'm more familiar with from reading about them. Um, I mean, you know my family history. I'm a big reader. I always read a lot of Black authors, so um, I'm familiar with those terms from there. But I remember as a kid reading them, like for the first time, I was like, "Ooh, that's harsh to call somebody that name." As far as in my experience, some of them I've heard used, but not all. Definitely high yellow, blue, black. Um, and then I guess on the more positive side, the comeback is the blacker the berry, sweeter the juice kind of thing.
Mhm.
So yeah, I'm definitely familiar with the terms. Uh, I can't think of a time when somebody has called me
Mhm.
they did to my face.
Mhm.
I'm not saying that it wasn't done, but I can't think of a time when it has happened. But I do recall growing up just having a sense of what the preference was, which was light skin, long hair, straight hair, no tight kinky curls. I do remember that being a preference. Just that feeling. It was nothing anybody ever said, but you just notice who gets the better treatment in the room, type of thing. Who people tend to flock to, as far as, oh, I want to be that person's friend. Or if you had long hair, people always playing in somebody's hair, that kind of thing.
Thank you, Sharon, for sharing that. It's interesting to me that you said you really had not had that experience.
And
Of
it's interesting to me
yeah.
too, because I had to sit and think about it. Like, is there a time? And I had to, like, because I'm sure I would have been upset if it had happened, but I can't think of a time. Now, that's not to say that I didn't have encounters with people that were negative,
Mhm.
where somebody said something off out of the way to me.
Yeah.
And I think, like, I do believe there was one time in high school, but I can't even remember what the boy said, but he said something to me. And I
Mhm.
remember that it made me very angry.
Yeah.
Like, I was mad for a couple of days, but I can't even remember what it was. But he really got in my face about it.
Mhm.
But I can't even remember what it was. I don't think it was any of those terms, but I think it had something to do with that type of thing.
Yeah.
But it was definitely about looks,
Mhm.
even if he didn't use those particular words.
Okay. Thank you for sharing your experience. Jerry, have you heard any of those
Yes.
names? Yeah. Real quick, yes, huh?
Just in case we freeze again. Yes, I've heard almost all of those. And being in Jamaica, I've heard. I've been called Brownin.
Mm,
That's one in Jamaica that they use a lot for the lighter skin.
mm,
Um, and in Jamaica, we keep it simple. If you're dark skin, they just call you blacker. So
mhm.
yeah.
Okay. Okay.
I
Now
saw
look,
someone's comment pop up
yes,
that said they were called red bone. And I have had people say to me, "Oh, you're cute for a dark girl."
yes, yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
okay. Thanks for sharing.
Right, right. You
What's
see,
that supposed to mean?
right, right. And that brings me to this next comment. I need for Darlene to talk about this because she said usually the dark skinned girls who were jealous of the light skinned red bone girls use those terms. So, Darlene, I need for you to tell me in your comments, explain to me how you perceived uh the jealous. I want to hear that because I want to know if we can go deeper into was it jealousy or was it more of that privilege, light skin privilege, that was being, I guess, elevated even as a result? And that's how we perceive it, that they were jealous. And maybe not, maybe we should start thinking about it more of it was, the same sense of what privilege looked like to us. When I say us, I mean light skinned folks, when light skinned Black folks, when we think about white privilege, what that looks like. And it's not, we might call somebody out their name, but it's not that we're jealous of them, but it means that we're tired of being oppressed because of our skin color. So I'm wondering, in that sense, if we can kind of think a little deeper about, was it jealousy? And Darlene, I'd be curious to know, hear what you got to say in the comments. Stacy says she's been referred to often as red bone. Stacy, I've heard that one a lot too. And what I've been called throughout my life, red bone, I really despise those names: high yellow, light bright, almost white, and all that. But interestingly enough, I really did not even understand my privilege as a light skinned woman, or a lighter complexion woman. I didn't understand my privilege because I did not realize this issue of colorism until I got older. And when I was sitting with somebody and having a conversation about it, then they helped me understand my privilege. And that was hard for me to swallow. It was hard for me to understand. It was hard for me to fathom, because of course I'm thinking that we all in this thing together, right? We all Black folks. We all gotta fight the same oppression and the same burdens and barriers. So I had a hard time really understanding how someone could call me privileged. And then as I began to do a deeper study and understand some of the things that has been afforded to me as a result of my skin color. And then also, we have to understand that white folks deem lighter skinned people more acceptable, which gives us a level of privilege. So, all those names, they are hurtful, I think, no matter who's receiving it, whether if you're dark skinned and you're being called darky, if you're light skinned, you're being called, you know, light bright or whatever. Those names are hurtful, but unfortunately the burden is still with folks that have a darker hue to their skin, because they are the ones that are being discriminated against, are being stereotyped, all those things. So my next, Darlene says, let's read her comment. Those terms were used in high school. I haven't heard the term much being an adult among our race, but in high school, most guys gravitated to the lighter skin and shunned the dark skinned girls. You're absolutely right, Darlene. Lighter was associated with being prettier. All of those things, that's that privilege. And that's that thing that divides us within a community, is the privilege that is a result of colorism. Let me go ahead, keep adding your comments, people out there. I need to hear from you, but I'm going to ask this next question. I know earlier I had asked, I asked you all, what was your earliest experience or your earliest memory of being called a derogatory name as a result of your skin color? And Sharon, I don't know if this is still kind of aligns with what you said earlier when you said that you really didn't remember anything, but you did remember that that someone told you you a pretty girl to be dark or something along those lines.
Yeah, that was later in life.
Okay.
But I, not necessarily it being a derogatory name, but I do remember, at least in elementary school phase of that age group, of people comparing skin color. like I'm lighter than you. You put your arms up next to each other. Who's lighter, who's darker. I remember that. I don't recall again any specific derogatory language, which is really it's really odd to me because I spent my elementary years in Indiana, and I still have some issues when I go back there as far as the racial tension that I feel there. And I guess because it's always kind of beneath the surface.
Mm-hmm.
Not so much that people say things out loud, but there's the looks, the stares. I recall when I had gone back, I left after college and I had gone back. I guess I had to be in my mid-20s. So this was at a point where I had stopped relaxing my hair, and my hair was natural. And I got a lot of stares at the mall.
Yeah.
And this, I mean, it's not that long ago.
Yeah.
2000s. But that was not the thing. And I wasn't surprised because, like I said, when I was growing up there, I remember that the preference was always for the longer hair, the lighter skin type thing. But I do remember that happening. And it wasn't just white people who were giving me the stares. It was Black people. And I just, I said to myself, that's why I don't live here anymore.
Right.
That's why I won't ever come back. But I was there a lot last year, and I noticed a little more natural hair going on in the city. So maybe things are progressing a little bit. If not amongst others, but at least amongst ourselves as far as accepting our hair as it grows out of our heads. And I don't have any problem with people who relax their hair. I don't have any problem with weaves or anything. I've done all of it. I don't have a problem with coloring. Hair is just an accessory to me. You do what you want. The only time I have an issue with it is if the person is only doing it because they think this is not good enough.
Right.
I'm changing it because I have this colorism issue. I'm changing it because somebody outside of my culture has said there's something wrong with this. You have to straighten it in order to be accepted. So that's the only time I ever, have an issue with that. Otherwise, hair is hair. Cut it, wear it long, straighten it, wear it curly. It doesn't matter.
I think we have Jerry back. Jerry, are you back? Can you hear us okay?
It's gonna be, I don't know. It's going to be in and out. So I might have to jump off of this one because it's not frozen again.
Okay. All right. Well, do whatever you need to do, and we'll continue with the conversation, and hopefully we'll be able to get you in here. If not, then you'll have to come back. Okay. Now, Ron, you were mentioning something very important as you were talking about hair. I want us to think about the bleaching of skin, because we do a lot of things to our hair, but we also have seen in situations where people have bleached their skin. Now we know the jury is still out, or the verdict is still out on whether Michael would bleach his skin or not, so we don't know. There was some conversation about Megan Good, who was accused of bleaching her skin, but she said that there was some other things going on with her skin that caused her some kind of facial or something. She had gotten it messed up her skin or what have you. So we don't know. But what we do know is that there are people that definitely bleach their skin. And matter of fact, I was reading an article the other day that, Africa, if you watch any African movies or videos or something, that I'm starting to see more and more women on the screen, music artists that are bleaching their skin. It is such a huge issue now. And I just wonder, Sharon, if you can, help us process why it is that you think women and men even are going to the extremes of using product that is toxic, that cause harm to your internal organs, and also all sorts of ramifications for bleaching skin. Help us process what's going on. What do you think is pushing people to that degree of wanting to look light or white?
There's so much that goes into that. Um, we're exposed to it, I think, from birth. In
Mm-hmm.
the books that we read, the fairy tales that we see, the illustrations, the things we see on TV, the cartoons, the movies,
Mm-hmm.
um, everybody that's in front of us on the screen,
Yeah.
I think there's so much exposure to this idea of what is considered beautiful, what is considered acceptable, and part of that has to do with who forms that narrative,
Mm-hmm.
who's in control of publishing and broadcasting. It's not people who look like us,
Yeah.
so they're going to put images on the screen that either look like them or make them feel comfortable, um, and that's what we're all exposed to.
Mm-hmm.
So whether you want to or not, you're kind of socialized into believing that narrative. So in order to come out of that, it's you have to really be thoughtful and intentional
Yeah.
about what you're thinking, about what you're accepting, about what you think about yourself, when you look in the mirror, and what you think about other people. You really have to be intentional about it because it's just there and we consume it daily without even realizing it. So you really have to think about it. And you know, the people who have gone to these measures to totally change their skin color, I've seen some of the photos,
Yeah.
and you just look at them as, why couldn't you have accepted yourself the way you were made?
Right. Right.
And I get it. I get it.
Yeah.
It's not saying anything against them, because I get that it's like an onslaught
Mm-hmm.
of images and ideas, and you also see it played out in your life where you see certain people get advantages and privileges, and you may be thinking, if I were only this, then that's going to fix it. But doing that to your skin is just another one of those things where we're trying to make an exterior change
Yeah.
to correct something that's going on inside.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, when I was reading this article, and I'll have to put the link up, one of the things that was mentioned is that the author says whiteness has been elevated and presented as a universal standard of
Mhm, mhm,
progress.
mhm,
When people say it's about whiteness, it's not necessarily to physically be white. It's about wanting access to things that white people have and easy
mhm,
access to privilege, economic and social status. And I'm wondering if that's something that we internalize, Jerry,
mhm,
even within our culture, that it's not so much about the hue of the skin, but what it represents. It looks like the lighter you get to, the closer you get to white, the more you look like that you have achieved. um Jerry, tell me what your experience has been when you are, what help us continue to process this, when you think about people that are bleaching their skin. Do you see it as something about appearance, or is it, as the author said, that it's more about getting close to what white people have?
mhm.
I think my perception might be different, because we're doing. You can't hear me. Oh,
I can hear you.
um, I grew up in Jamaica, and it was normal to see the darker skin bleaching.
Mhm.
Um, but it didn't flow over into the racism part. It was more just, oh, okay, so you just want to look whiter. That's fine. You just want to look lighter. It's not that you want to be white, because I don't think Jamaica really had so much racism as it was more of a socialism.
Mm.
So a lot of these things I'm learning now with everything that's going on in America.
Mhm.
So it's a different perception for me
Mhm.
with
Mhm.
certainty with these questions. That's why.
No, that's great. I think it's important because when we say black people, we realize that we talking about black people from all over,
Mhm.
the globe. So that has perhaps landed in America. And like I said, now this bleaching phenomenon that's happening in Africa is really it's I forget the statistics on it, but the statistics are well over 50% of women that are now bleaching their skin and taking
Mhm.
that risk and going to the degree of even trying to bleach their young baby skin so that that baby is presented
I
as
do
like,
remember I do remember growing up in Jamaica, there was a song called Dem a Bleach.
mm,
And it was about, women bleaching their skin
mhm,
because they were apparently there was some issue because another guy wrote a song called Browning that only the light skinned girls were getting all the
mhm,
love.
mhm,
So I didn't know about the bleaching until that song. And then I'm like, oh, okay, so everybody wanted to look like us, but
mhm,
we didn't know why.
mhm.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
Well, and that goes then to speak once again to this issue that we have allowed to somebody else's
Mhm.
culture, we have allowed it to manifest in such a huge way within our community that we're now carrying a burden that somebody has
Mhm.
placed upon us. It has nothing to do with our own beauty. And I think where we need to start normalizing is this black standard of beauty, our standard of beauty, your own individual standard
Mhm.
of beauty. So much so that we've had people like what was her name? Rachel Dazelle, uh,
Mhm.
that decided that she wanted to have some of this black beauty. Jessica Krug, the professor that was at George Washington University. That was another. I think she kind of flew under the radar because we were still kind of stuck on Rachel. But here we are, we have people that are, practicing cultural appropriation and all these other
Mhm.
things. And we have so much of our own beauty that thrives through us and lives in us, not just the hue of our skin, but our culture and everything about us. And we're in this argument about color. And maybe I'm saying this and you're thinking, oh, she's light skinned, so she don't have to face the issue. But what I want is to see for the black community to start having a conversation about this so we can put this thing to rest and start owning our beauty. And like I said, I'm not just talking about physical appearance. I'm talking about our culture, the things that
Mhm.
exist within our culture that sometimes we forget about because we're so focused on this external piece.
Mhm.
So let me read a couple of these comments before we move on. Rachel, thanks for being here this evening. She says she just logged on. She's glad that she didn't miss this one. Keep giving us those comments. Stacy Gary says, but for the longest, I honestly did not consider myself light skinned because I grew up with a mother and sister who often tried to tan in the summer, a grandmother and aunties who have milky skin, the damn near white skin. So in our home, my younger sister, dad, who was much darker, had the dark brown tones. It is interesting as I reflect because I recall praying for babies with color. So I grew up thinking being lighter was a bad thing. That resonates with me, Stacy. And if we have time, I'll tell you why. Rachel says a movie that comes to mind. She's talking about colorism and the Spike Lee movie. And since you missed the beginner, Rachel, we did talk a little bit about that in early on at the intro of our conversation. Darlene says,
Mhm.
I remember someone did an experiment with us with
Mhm.
little girls in regards to choosing a doll. All the little girls chose a white doll over the black doll. All the little girls said the white doll was prettier. Yes,
Mhm.
yes, that I remember that. And matter of fact, I was doing some reading on that prior to this conversation. I think that experiment was somewhere in the 1940s. Uh,
Mm.
and and there could have been a lot of reasons. There wasn't so many. There was, they wasn't selling so many black baby dolls at the store in the 1940s. Um, Carrie says, "I appreciate you raising how this issue has played out in so many different ways." Thank you, Carrie. Black men have a role to play in this. We're gonna get there. I promise you. um, Jane Elliott. Jane Elliott did the blue eyes test,
Mhm.
Stacy, if I remember correctly. Okay. All right. So let's go on to our next question. There's so much to talk about. That's why this is a series, because we have a lot to talk about. You
Can I jump in real quick
Let's
in
do.
regards to the doll
Yeah.
situation? Um, because of that type of thing, I've been very conscious of things in my house.
Mm-hmm.
The toys that I give to my daughter, toys that I give to other people's kids, because it is about seeing yourself in
Mm-hmm.
different places. You may not see it outside of this house, but when you walk in here, I want you to see some black art on the wall. I want you to
Yeah.
see various shades of people on the wall,
Yeah.
different hair textures. Same things with the dolls. Now we have a little more option with dolls in their color. Like you can get different shades, different skin color, different hair types. So I do appreciate that we've come a little bit of ways there. But I think that's why it's important to give kids, toys and dolls. And, if it doesn't have to be just a black doll, like you could have Moana, you could have anyone of any culture, to just mix it up so that your kids see something different than
Right.
what's just constantly being what they're being bombarded with all the time. Like there are definitely white people in the world, but there are people of other cultures also. And even, outside of our culture, I also think about, white people who have certain hair colors or certain hair textures. And that came to mind because I have a friend who has red hair. She never had a doll with red hair.
Yeah.
So she never had something that looked like her. And
Right.
those things are important. They may not seem important to other people, but they do make a difference if you're associating something of beauty with something that does not look like you.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually, over time, that will affect how you see yourself.
Right. Yeah. That's so true. I think um children today have, well, there we have more access to black dolls, and a lot of that is
Mhm.
due to uh private black business owners
Mhm.
either creating black dolls, or some of the bigger companies realized that it was a money maker for them, and so they decided to put more black dolls on the shelf. But I think it is so important that we are able to see ourselves as little children growing up. They need to be able to see themselves, uh, the color of their skin, the texture of their hair. They need to be able to see themselves doing jobs and things and
Mhm.
careers that are typically reserved for either male or female. But
Mhm.
we need to make sure that we are starting that early on, reminding our children how beautiful they are, so that they can start appreciating the skin that
Mhm.
they're in. Now, Miss Jerry, let me ask you a question. Now, I know that, being from Jamaica, I'm gonna get the accent right. Um,
Jamaica.
okay. I, I just want to know how to do the what's the boom boom? What is it?
No, not now. No, it will be recorded. Nope.
Okay, okay. Well, you'll teach me how to do it, because whenever I think about, the girls coming together, I want to make sure that it's that party vibe. So, um,
Booyaka,
but
booyaka.
okay, there you go.
Mhm.
Okay, so I'm wondering, if have you ever benefit have you ever felt that you benefited from, or received privilege because of your skin tone?
No, only because I grew up in a family that's very mixed. Mommy is what we're both. Everybody's Jamaican. but mommy's what you call Jamaican white, and daddy is the dark Jamaican.
Mhm.
But you put, mommy has the Scottish side because great grandfather Scottish. So my family have the light skin and the dark skin siblings. We all blend together. So colorism never really reared its ugly head until I moved to America.
Mhm.
Because even when they used to call us browning, to us it was a term of endearment.
Mm.
Like, hey browning, hey, we're gone. Hey blacker, hey, we didn't see growing up. I mean, again, I left Jamaica when I was 15. So
Mhm.
we didn't see growing up as an issue. And then I come here and I didn't I mean, then also growing up at JW, it's a variety of people in that religion that you don't we all mesh. But I
Mhm.
didn't realize colorism until I moved to Florida.
Okay.
So I don't know if my shade
Mhm.
got me any advantage.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, the earliest thing I could probably remember is in high school. I probably should have failed geometry, and the teacher was like,
Mm.
You're cute.
Yeah.
You're fine. Go ahead and
Yeah.
get that."
Yeah.
Mm.
And it
And
would
that's
be
truth.
interesting. Yeah,
Mm.
it would be interesting to know how many children with a darker skin tone was given that same privilege by a teacher, because I think the most interesting thing about privilege is because it's unearned, that we don't often know that it's happening.
Mm.
We exist in it, we move in it, we operate in it, and we don't even know that it's happening. Now, can I say that I have received job opportunities and things like that as a result of my skin complexion? Nobody can tell me for certain that I haven't, and nobody can tell me for certain that I have,
Mhm.
because I have not thought about who else came into the room and applied for
Mhm.
that same job, or I didn't know who had applied for the same job. But I am almost certain that when I go into a room, that there is some level of being more comfortable when the lighter skinned Black woman walks into the room. Whereas when the darker skinned Black person walk into the room tenses up a bit. And I have felt that in a number of settings, particularly since I've lived in Florida, um, and working around probably more white people than I did when I lived up north. But there has been a sense that, okay, there's a little more acceptability being a light skinned woman. Sharon, have you ever felt like you have received privilege or been denied something as a result of your skin color?
It's hard to say for all the reasons that you mentioned.
Hmm.
Um, I have been a lot of times the only person in the room that looks like me.
Hmm.
So there's always an awareness
Yeah.
of, is this interaction based on, somebody's bias, somebody's prejudice, somebody's, racist tendencies. I mean, I'm not going to jump to that conclusion every time, but I'm Black and I'm female. So when I'm in rooms with people who are a lot of times white male, um, that's playing in my mind in the
Hmm.
background. But I can't say for sure whether it's an issue or not, um, with the individual. And I'm not going to say also that I immediately jump to that conclusion, because you can also have that issue with another person of color
Hmm.
where they have their own, maybe some colorism going on in their mind, whether they be a light skinned person or a dark skinned person. It could go either way. So, it's just like you said, there's a feeling.
Yeah.
Do I feel like there's tension? And if there is this the cause? So I think that's more of what goes on after the fact. Um, and it can kind of drive you crazy because you don't really know
Right.
what was that
Right.
in this situation, especially if it's a one-time meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And then you walk away and you never get to meet that person again and kind of see were they just having a bad day, or were they having an issue with me because of what I look like, what I might represent to them. So I think it's more things like that. Like that has definitely happened on many occasions.
Yeah. Well, I want to move this conversation along because I don't want us to run out of time. If you're watching, you notice over in the comments that I did link an article. Can you pass the brown paper bag test? Are y'all familiar with the brown paper bag test?
Yes.
Okay, so for those of you that have never heard of the brown paper bag test, it's where you would hold the brown paper bag up to your skin to see if you were lighter than the bag. And if you were lighter than the bag, then you were typically, allowed into certain rooms. So in this article, it talks about an experience that Henry Louis Gates Jr. shared. And he said this was in his book, The Future of the Race. But he said that some of the brothers who came from New Orleans held a bag party. As a classmate explained it to me, a bag party was a New Orleans custom wherein a brown paper bag was stuck on the door. Anyone darker than the bag was denied entrance. That was one cultural legacy that would be put to rest in a hurry, he said, but in a manner of speaking, it was replaced by an opposite test whereby those who were deemed not Black enough ideologically were to be shunned. So he said, I was not sure this was an improvement. And so basically what he's saying is that here we go in our community. Once again, we are perpetuating this system of oppressing one group or esteeming one group over another based on the historical construct of colorism. And so on one hand, you light enough. If you're lighter than the bag, you can come in. But then on the other hand, in another time, then it's like you're not dark enough. How can we solve this issue within the community amongst ourselves? This is the issue that we need to solve amongst ourselves. How can we do it, Jerry? Where can we start, Jerry?
Okay, can I just say, I didn't know about that test until maybe about 10 minutes ago.
Okay.
The foolishness, right? The foolishness.
Right. I'm sitting here going, wait,
are
what?
you serious?
Yeah.
Like, there are like 3 different color paper bags. Which one we going by?
Right.
And who came up with,
so think about that old lunch bag before they start recycling, because the recycle
Jamaica are here because we have 2 different shit.
Yeah.
So, that's ridiculous, one.
Yeah.
And for that to have been a thought among Black people is, again,
be real.
I'm new to this whole racism, colorism, privilege, because I experienced none of that. I grew up saying we should love everybody. My wife said I wasn't aware. I grew up knowing none of that because I grew up we have to love everybody. I come to America, I come to Florida, and I'm like, there's a difference between white people and Black people. We don't just love everybody. So a lot of this colorism and isms for Blacks is new for me because I never experienced it. I wasn't aware of it.
And that might also be, Jerry, the privilege that you and I have, that we don't have to be aware of it. Now, I tell you what I have been aware of. I've been aware of when I felt ostracized by my darker hue sisters, where I feel like, dang, I can't be a part. I can't play jacks with y'all because I'm not brown. Y'all can't jump rope with me. Um, that sort of thing. But I think the end of it is that there are things when you have privilege, you don't have to be aware of it. And that's that common conversation we're trying to have with white people right now, which they're having a hard time understanding. You don't have to be aware of it because it's just given to you. It's unearned. You don't even expect it. It just happens because of who you are. Sharon, what about you in this? Have you heard the paper bag?
Oh, definitely, for sure. I definitely know what it is. And Jerry, I'm jealous that you you haven't had to know this kind of stuff.
Right.
But yeah, I definitely know what the paper bag test is, what it was used for. And how do we get beyond it?
Yeah.
It's gonna take a lot of work.
Yeah.
It's gonna take a lot of work. It's gonna take on our part as people of color, really learning what our history is in this country, what our history was before we got here.
Yeah.
Because if you're only educated by what you get in the school systems in this country, all you're going to know about Black people is slavery, the Civil War, and the Civil Rights Movement.
Yeah.
And maybe a few Olympians scattered here and there. And that might be 20 pages in a book. So if that's all you're getting, that's all you're going to know. Right. So we really have to take the reins of educating ourselves and educating our children about who we were before we got here, because that's influencing a lot of how we see ourselves. If all you see yourself as a slave, mm-hmm. or somebody who was fought over in a war, and you don't see your rich history that you were part of cultures and civilizations and kingdoms and all that before your people ever got here, then your vision is skewed about who you are. Mm-hmm. So it's really gonna take a conscious effort to educate ourselves and take control of that, because we clearly can't depend on the school system. What little we have, they're trying to take away now. So we have to be in control of the messaging that we give to each other, and we have to, be more intentional. We're so distracted by stuff that doesn't even mean anything right now. You're distracted by, like you said, Housewives, which, it's entertaining if you like to watch a car wreck. But if you're doing that all the time, and then you get caught up in, oh, well, now I need to have the latest bag. I need to have this piece of hair. I need to have this jewelry. I need to have all these things. All these external things are taking you away from the things that are important, that can actually build you up. And I like what you said earlier. It is about accepting yourself as an individual, because you don't want to discount other people's beauty. Yeah. A person with a lighter skin tone, they have their beauty too. Right. And just because I esteem my darker skin doesn't mean I don't honor your lighter skin. So you can't start putting people in buckets, because then we're back to the same thing again. You can't say, oh, to be Black and proud means you're dark with an afro. Now you're discounting your sister or your brother who has lighter skin and, wavy hair. So you have to take it out of those. Stop putting people in boxes. Mm-hmm. Create your own narrative based on history and the value that you find in yourself, because we bought into the narrative of the colonizer. They've come up with these labels and these tags that they want to put on us so that they can maintain control. And we've bought into it so that they don't really even have to do anything to us anymore. We're fighting against each other. Mm-hmm. So those are things that, you have to be very intentional about. And, for instance, when I was watching the latest Wakanda, I had a very hard time with that movie, because this narrative was kind of playing in my head. Mm. You have two rich cultures, and they are fighting each other, as opposed to working together to deal with this outside influence, which is basically colonization. And it's what we're doing now. Like, I couldn't root for either side, because you're tearing, both of you have such value in your culture, and you're tearing each other apart. So, it's that kind of thing that we really have to be more thoughtful
Yeah.
about knowing who we are and just valuing each other individually.
Yeah, I think that's well said, Sharon, because we keep I think leaving out of the discussion how we got here
Mm-hmm.
in this, in this position of looking at one another's skin and deciding that it's not enough.
Mm-hmm.
Either it's not black enough or it's not light enough, or and that was someone else's
Mm-hmm.
mess that we have continued to carry. There has to be a way for us to sit down and finally resolve that we are black people and we are proud of who we are, and we will no longer accept the burden of slavery and the language and the identity that was placed upon us as a result of slavery, and then has continued to trickle its way through the system,
Mm-hmm.
which, of course, now gives systemic racism, the marginalization and the oppression and all those things that really what created this thing called colorism. And these are things that most Black people are fighting against every day. We fight against systemic racism, we fight against oppression and marginalization, but yet we're not fighting hard enough against internalized racism, nor are we in ourselves nor within our community. And we have to start fighting against those things that continue to plague our community by outsiders. And I'm not trying to be negative when I say outsiders, but I'm talking about people that aren't in Black community,
Mm-hmm.
who continue to, they kind of, it reminds me of the kid at school, the one that start the fight and then run away.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it's
Exactly.
like. And now you got two kids fighting and they don't even know why they're fighting. And the other kid's gone on to the little candy store or whatever down the way, or home, and having dinner.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're still fighting this thing, and we have to find a way to resolve it. Uh, Jerry, I want you to have a few last words, and then I'm going to get to these comments and questions that we have. But I know that your experience is vastly different. But since you've been in America, and and we're having this conversation tonight, what things do you feel we can put into practice to help us learn how to love who God created us to be?
I think for me,
Yeah.
it's just not. My wife said
Mm-hmm.
we can't love everybody. And I really believe, because that is what we were designed to do. That is what we were created to do. And
Mhm.
I think when we start doing that, it's not hard to love. It's not.
Mm-hmm.
But when we start doing that,
Mhm.
I think all the pieces will fall into place. I mean, the scripture says it. It starts there, and then everything
Mm-hmm.
falls. So if we love each other for who we are, what you see, how we present ourselves, if you
Mhm.
love all of that, it will break barriers.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
That's my
Well,
passionate.
I love your optimism, Jerry Lee. However, I also know that the Bible has been used to enslave and to justify the enslavement of folks. And so I love the idea of this love, and I believe that we have been called to love one another. The Bible it
Mm-hmm.
tells us that love one another. Um, but as we're on our way to loving one another, how do we first learn how to love ourselves within the Black community? When I say love ourselves, I'm talking about all of us that looks different as a result of our skin color, the texture of our hair. How do we learn how to love ourselves?
I'm going to follow what Jerry said because I do like that. And I think that everyone is not lovable, but I think that to have your purpose be to love everyone, I like that. And I think that the Bible does call us to do that, even though it's difficult. And to address your question, how do we get there? It's not going to be easy, because some of that has to do with loving yourself, like you said. And I don't know, if you're a Christian, then you would believe that the Lord created you
right
for a specific purpose and a specific time. And if you believe that, then you should also believe that the way he made you look is a part of his plan, and you should accept that. And the way he made somebody else look is a part of his plan, and you should accept that. So all of that, if everybody did that, then yes, that's what would get us there. And so, Jerry, I don't want you to let that go, because even though it seems very optimistic, I think that's the right foundation and a right mindset, because it requires you to deal with it.
I know it's not reality.
No, but no, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that is a negative thing. I think it's a good thing, because it forces you to look at people as individuals instead of what we do, which is lump people together and then make a decision or apply some idea to this whole group of people, when that's not true. If you deal with people as individuals, it helps you get around all of that. So now I've got off track, but even though it's difficult what you're suggesting, I still think that that's still the call, even though it is difficult. But to see people as individuals and stop putting them in with these labels. But that goes back to our original question, and this whole conversation is that we are dealing with somebody else's expectation and what they put on us that we've accepted, and now we've turned on each other and spitting that back out. So we have to, get to a place where we can let those things go and be, again, intentional about why we think certain things about certain people. If you see somebody and, a man, and he's dark skinned, well, why isn't he acceptable to you? Why isn't his dark skin good enough for you? Why isn't this woman's light skin good enough to you? That's a hard question, because at this point, it almost requires therapy to break it down and to peel back the layers, because maybe something happened to you when you were a kid where a light-skinned person said something to you that hurt you. And now you have all these negative feelings about light-skinned people based on that, but you don't even realize that that's what it is.
Yeah. Oh, you guys are really, really good. Thank you, Jerry. I love your optimism. I got to give the pushback, though. I got to give the pushback, because I want us to think about, especially for people that don't believe, that aren't Christian. They believe in something, or, but they're not Christian. And so this whole ideal of love, I want them to be able to enter into this conversation and space also, and to be able to contribute. Okay, how do we get there? And so, wow, our time has gone by way so quickly. But so I know that we have to end this, and something we did not touch on tonight is the standard of beauty when it comes to how this thing now trickles into what our brothers, Black men, accept as beauty based on this standard of beauty. And now we have a whole nother challenge to colorism, which is that lighter skinned woman who is, gets the guys, gets the dates and all that kind of stuff. Like you said, Sharon, somebody, oh, you cute for a dark girl, like, as if that's unacceptable to be a darker skinned woman. So we have all of this stuff, these burdens that we're carrying in our community. And I think that it will do us some good to do some, do some reflecting, do also maybe some, analyzing of self.
Mhm.
Let's try to figure out what drives us when we start thinking of beauty. What
Mhm.
is, why do we think light equates beauty and dark equates bad? Because
Mhm.
that's the way our society continues to tell us. Um, One of my young brothers in ministry, he always puts a black heart behind everything he says. And he says, I want people to start accepting a black heart as something beautiful, not just
Mhm.
something that relates to death, because
Mhm.
that's what often happens. That's in our society. Anything black is something negative, unless
Mhm.
it comes to finance, and then everybody wants to be in the black at the end of the year. But that's it. But usually, what our society, black
Mhm.
is always something negative, and that has become part of our DNA, how we function in this society, as Black people, white people as a whole. And I want us to get to a point where I want us to see all the different colors and
Mhm.
think, oh my God, look at this tapestry, this coat of many colors.
Mhm.
Look how beautiful it is, because
Mhm.
it is so diverse and beautiful. Sharon, you made me think about your daddy when you talked about that dark man.
Lord. See, look at you chasing the dark man.
Oh, oh, Lord have mercy.
She over here. Whoo.
I'm getting better, y'all. For those of you that are listening, and know that my husband passed away, Sharon's dad, a year and some months ago, and so I can smile today when I say something about that man and, and that brown hue.
It's okay.
Look, you still blushing. You still
I'm
blushing.
blushing, right? That's how he was. He just yeah, yeah. Okay,
Look at her. Said you was very charismatic, and he's still getting you. Look at you.
okay. I know I shouldn't have said anything about this. Oh my gosh, I'm blushing. People are they're gonna wonder. Okay, so Rachel asks, what are your thoughts on colorism in the fashion industry? Rachel, remind me to tackle this question on the 21st when we come back and talk about hairism, and and we're going to talk about privilege. But I want to talk about this piece, not just in the fashion industry, but also in Hollywood.
Mhm.
um Although Viola Davis, I think she threw y'all for a loop the other day, didn't she? Emmy, Grammy, Oscar, Tony. Uh-huh.
Mhm.
So we need to talk about that, because we do see a lot of the influencers um and things in the fashion industry. They're all either they're white or of a lighter hue, and we are getting some darker hues in the fashion industry. But oftentimes you see them, they have been stereotyped that their hair has to look a certain way, and and so they still not getting the message in the fashion industry.
Mhm.
But we need to definitely talk about that. So if we don't get around to it the 21st, we can tackle it on the 28th, when we talk once again about privilege, colorism, and natural hair on the 28th of February. Listen, you all, thank you so much. Stacy, thank you so much for your comments. Spread the word. Our ancestors were not slaves. There were people who were enslaved.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Darlene, we have a lot of work to do to undo the brainwashing
Mhm.
of colorism. Right, right. This is one of the reasons I love Jerry Lee Brown. That's Carrie. Send the love through the airway. Look at you blushing. Now who's blushing? we say black is beautiful, and we need to accept that all shades of black is beautiful. I love that, Darlene. All shades, every last one of them. Can you imagine? I mean, think about it, you all. We come in so many different hues. I mean, think about it. It's just it's beauty. Stacy says one step may be to break some of the vocabulary that has been taught, such as classifications of race. We're individuals from different tribes, yes, migrating from different geographical regions, whether via the diaspora or other means. Break the thought of the social construct of race. Okay, Stacy, I'm hearing you. We got some work to do, don't we? Tapestry, yes, yes, yes. So I want to thank you all so much tonight. I know, ladies, we did not get to all the questions, right?
Part two,
part
three,
two,
or
part
four.
two.
So,
Part two.
So we need a part.
The series.
We gonna keep this series going, but then maybe we need to come back and deal with this colorism piece a little bit more. Okay. I want to thank you all.
I need some more education.
Okay. Sharon, do you have any last thoughts?
Again, I will just say that in order to address the issue, you just really need to be aware of it and how it impacts your own thought processes, and just try to do what you can do as an individual to address it in your own life as you meet with people and you deal with people, and just question yourself about your own thoughts and how you perceive other people.
Yes. Jerry, final thoughts?
You know, I'm all about love. So, I mean, if you really want to understand it, I always go to Bob Marley. And he speaks a lot about why we need to love each other. And it's not just, you know, the colorism. It's just, we just need to love each other, whether you're Christian or not. Bob just said, love everybody, because that's what we're supposed to do. And if you do that, we can go from there.
Yeah. What the world needs now. Lisa Friday, she said, I jumped on late, but enjoyed the conversation. Great discussion. Thank you, Lisa, for being here. Thank you, everybody, all the Tuesday Together Talk audience. Thank you for your participation tonight. Make sure you spread the word that this is the first night of our series. And if someone wants to hear the conversation, watch the conversation, just tap on to Facebook at Reconciliation and Equity, or you can go over to YouTube at Reconciliation and Equity. And you can even find this conversation on our website at www.reconciliationandequity.com. Tuesday Together Talk function under the umbrella of Bridge, Building Reconciliation, Inclusion, Diversity, and Gender Equity, which I am the founder and CEO. I thank you all so much for hanging out tonight. Sharon and Jerry, please stay in the studio and just for a few minutes so we can have a quick chat afterwards. But make sure you guys come back on the 21st of February. I'm going to give y'all a break, Valentine's Day. Y'all get y'all break so y'all can, go out and spend money on folks. But the other thing is, while you're spending money on folks, don't forget that February is also Heart Health Month. Be aware of your heart health. If you got hypertension and cholesterol issues and any other, just make sure that you are taking care of yourself. All right. So on the 21st, I'll see you back for Privilege and Natural Hair. And then on the 28th, I will see you for Privilege, Colorism, and Natural Hair. Before I let y'all go, I want to give y'all a sneak peek on something. So y'all stay still for a minute before I let you all leave this space. All right. We got something special coming. Check this out. check us out. Keep following us. We got good things to come. Good night, everybody. I'll see y'all soon. And here we go. We're going to let y'all go. Good night.